Sparkster has sold a kit to the government of Malaysia.
Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to do an intro with Sparkster. Sparkster is a project that got a lot of attention last year, and they did quite a significant ICO in 2018. However, they could not launch their project until now. So now is really the time that they're launching, and in this video we're going to discuss what happened. Why did they lock up their tokens for 1 year so that the investors couldn't move them? And also we're going to discuss what they're doing, because they're really doing something that might help a lot of organizations in terms of writing software and writing software without knowing how to program. So guys, I hope you will enjoy. I hope you will learn a lot, because I personally enjoyed interviewing Sajad, which is the CEO of Sparkster. I think the conversation turned out really well. I think you will like it. You should know before we start that they are sponsoring the channel, and it is of course amazing that we have sponsors. So thank you so much, Sparkster. Thank you so much, Sajad. Let's get into the interview, and Sajad will also give you a very important announcement at the end of this video. Okay, Sajad, very welcome to the show. You are the CEO of Sparkster. First of all, how are you doing, and how is this bear market treating you guys? Have you survived, or have you not survived?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Ivan. It's truly a pleasure to be here and to be here with you. The bear market, I think, has been difficult on everybody. It's been difficult on our token holders. It's been a difficult time, but nonetheless, we've focused on building technology. We've focused on spreading our mission and communicating what we're trying to achieve, and I think that that's gone very well.
Yeah.
How's it gone for you?
Well, it's going forward. I mean, we're still here. We're still doing the shows, and the channel is growing nonetheless. So it's very good to see everyone still being engaged, and only the quality people are here. Like everyone from the last bull market who was here just for the quick returns, they're all gone. So only quality people are still here. Looking at the market today, what do you think is missing? For example, adoption. How is it going with adoption? Because sometimes it's difficult to see real adoption in terms of dApps and in terms of people actually using blockchain, except for just speculation.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I think that this is really the biggest problem that we have to address as an industry, right? If we don't actively work on solving the adoption problem, I think a lot of people in the past have been building technology for technology's sake because it sounds like a good idea, right? Well, one of the things that we've done is that we've actually gone out to industry and we've met with a lot of various companies. For example, when I was in the US, I met with Verizon. Last week I had dinner with EE, which is a mobile operator here in the UK. And we're continually talking about, what specific problems exist that we might be able to solve and bring technology to. Sparkster, while we're very proud of the technology that we build, what's most important is that it's not just technology, but about how we can solve the problems that real people have real problems in the real world. And I think as an industry, we kind of need to adopt that mantra, if that makes sense. So we're following a methodology by a guy named Steve Blank, who's kind of the creator of the lean startup movement. And so our product roadmap is kind of combined with the marketing and sales teams that go out and speak to customers. And I often meet directly, especially with the largest ones.
So before we get into that, let's take a step back. As you say, adoption is important. It's important to talk to people on the ground who will actually use the technology. But what is actually missing? What kind of problem are you trying to focus on and solve? Let's start there. What specific thing do we need to fix with Sparkster?
So let me give you kind of the history of kind of where Sparkster came from. So Sparkster, my history is that I've been running businesses in the past, and one of my greatest challenges was that when there's a problem that needs a software solution, it takes too long to get those solutions designed, built, and implemented, right? By the time, for example, you're building a solution for the factory floor, by the time it gets delivered, the people in the factory have come up with some Excel-based solution and moved on to something else. So when we first started Sparkster, it was about how do we put the tools of software development in the hands of the people who are actually running that department or whatever it might be, right? We've kind of been born from a problem. And then later on, we were looking at, okay, so we're working on solving the problem of, enabling software to be built codelessly without having to learn how to write software in a drag and drop sort of fashion. We also then looked at, okay, where is this software going to run? And the blockchain movement and so forth in 2016 was pretty hot at that time. So we were looking at white papers for different ways of applying this technology, and we saw that there's an opportunity to build a decentralized cloud for running this software. And I can get into more detail about what makes our cloud different and unique from what already exists and so forth.
Right. So it's cool. It's interesting that you mentioned that people basically solve so many things with Excel. Like people do not, sometimes they don't even try to build a custom solution. They just try to do something quickly in Excel. And in many times it does work, but it also becomes messy pretty quickly. So when you say that you want to do a drag and drop coding environment, basically a development environment, who is the target audience? Is it for dApps? Is it for normal software? Who will code using your environment?
So the reality is, we're adoption focused. We haven't seen dApps adopted in the real world, right? So we're trying to enable people that are taking those things that they are building their sort of Excel-based solutions for, and to be able to convert those or to build them inside of Sparkster, where you don't have multiple versions of the truth. You don't have issues with sharing. You don't have issues with, keeping everyone updated and emailing spreadsheets back and forth. You have a single source of truth. You have one application. It's integrated with the rest of your company's software and so forth.
Right. So why can't I just create a Google spreadsheet, place it in one map that everyone has access to, and then when I update it, it also gets updated, and everyone also has the same version?
Well, a spreadsheet isn't software, right? A spreadsheet is a spreadsheet. It shows information.
But yeah, for example, you can script a lot in a spreadsheet. That's what I'm what I'm saying with like Excel sheets. Some companies are using Excel like backend. They even connect it to their web services. It's it's a lot you can actually do, but of course it's messy. That's not how things should be done.
Absolutely. But for example, can the head of purchasing write the scripts for that? Can a factory manager write scripts in VB or whatever it might be? That's not their skill set, right? But if you give them a platform like Sparkster, which is, a plain English language sort of development environment, a drag and drop environment, that's the sort of experience that we think that people will adopt. And we actually have, people who've built things that do work in those sorts of functions inside of Sparkster, and they tell us that it's understandable and it's easy to use.
Right. So I understand it's easy to use, but at the same time, scripting languages exist for a reason. You cannot express everything with just drag and drop. It becomes difficult very, very quickly. And while you can maybe solve some basic problems and you can express to the computer some basic algorithms by just dragging and dropping, at the end of the day, I think you will probably have to have some kind of scripting side to it all. Don't you agree? Can you do everything with drag and drop in terms of expressing what you want?
Yeah, so Sparkster's actually created a language. We worked with people in academia to create a plain English language that is Turing complete, right? And that gives you the full expressiveness of a programming language. But the difference is there's no syntax. You're not worrying about, cryptic language that the average person doesn't understand. It's plain English, right? And one of the key capabilities of the platform is that it hides a lot of the plumbing that software developers have to write. So by hiding away, or kind of automating some of the plumbing that software developers have to write, we make the process much simpler to be able to define what you want your application to do without having to worry too much about the internals of how this stuff happens, if that makes sense.
Right. So that's quite interesting. I mean, potentially in the future, that could be used for other software development as well, because if you say it is Turing complete, it means that you can do anything, any mathematical problem can with enough time be solved in it. So therefore, I think what is stopping it from being used professionally as well, not just, for people who don't know how to program. Why can't the professionals also use it if it has all of the flexibility?
And that's exactly where we're going, right? So today we have a no-code product. But where we're going is we're taking the no-code product and bringing it to what's called the low-code market. So the low-code market, Forrester believes that this market's worth $23 billion by 2022. And so our innovation for the low-code market is code only when necessary. You should be able to design interfaces and define logic and anything you really want to do. And when you feel like you're being restricted by the capabilities of the platform, that's when you can bring code into the picture to solve problems, if you will.
Right. So I think that makes sense when it comes to the language. I still have to try it. I'm gonna check it out exactly how it works. But if you say it's Turing complete, then I can see how that can be used both in low-code environment but also outside. So looking at what you guys have done, I know you had the token sale. I also know that some people are a bit frustrated with the fact that tokens have been locked for almost a year. So what is going on there, and why is it the case?
Yeah, so we were, if I'm not mistaken, we were the last major ICO that ran at the end of, before the market really crashed last year. And when we were discussing this with advisors and so forth about, what's the right course of action, we felt that it was in the long-term interests of the project and the long-term interest of token holders to keep tokens locked until conditions improve. So you might ask, well, why is that the case? Why keep tokens locked, right? Well, at that point in time, when ICOs were listing, they were falling 95%. That's not in the interest of the project or the long-term survivability of the project, right? We didn't want people to be hurt, and therefore we felt like, losing 90 or 95%, not only would it impact the interest and kind of the movement in the project itself, but the token holders themselves, would be hurt by such a decision. We didn't want to take that sort of a decision. And so we felt that the best thing we can do is focus on building technology, focus on delivering our roadmap, and focus on, what we've always been talking about, which is adoption and working with customers to make things happen. And that's really what we've done. We're one of the very few projects that's coming to market with working products, with actual customers, and so forth, right? And have a very, very bright future ahead of us. So I think we've used the time wisely, and obviously now conditions are much stronger and much better. It's the right sort of time to be listing a project.
Right, so you had the token sale, then you said it's a bear market, we don't want to list it because it's gonna lose all the value, people are just gonna dump it, so we're gonna wait for the next bull market. And that is a very tough decision to make as well, because it took a year now, but it might have taken 5 years or something else. So I do understand your side, I also do understand the frustration that people had. So why do you see that it is time right now? Because many people say that this bullish trend is good. I mean, in terms of Bitcoin it's good, but in terms of all of these IEOs, maybe it's all fake. Like maybe it is the exchanges that are creating this hype that is not real. Because I've heard some different opinions on that. Many people say that the retail demand is not there, like for IEOs and just buying tokens that are small cap. And what do you think about that? Do you agree or do you disagree?
I think that's the real problem. I think that's the real problem this industry really has, right? And that's why I think that we as an industry, all of us, really need to be focused on adoption. If we can, identify problems in the real world that real people have and be able to apply our technology to solve those problems, we won't be talking about, is this stuff fake? No, there'll be actual real utility.
Right. But I understand that long term, but short term, if you are gonna list like in the next months, I mean the danger is still here that it is gonna drop a lot. So I mean, how do you reason about this? Because obviously you could you have a chicken and egg problem. Obviously you could try to get adoption, but then I understand that you need tokens maybe for that for them to be released. So how will you short term really succeed in your launch so that you avoid the situation you were afraid of last year?
So I think that the market conditions are much more stable, right? And I think that what we've had in the course of this year is to really communicate our vision. I think that we've got a lot of supporters now that are with us because of what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing, not with us necessarily just for speculative reasons. Although, if that's why they were there, that's why they were there. But today, I think that we've got people that really believe in what we're doing. So I think that, from that perspective, there's a lot less risk. But more importantly, the where we are today is that we've got to make adoption a reality, and I don't know that we can necessarily do that with tokens being locked. It's now time to make that happen, if you will. Right. So one of the things that we're working on is how do we combine our technologies and apply them to a real world problem, right? That makes sense for actual token holders. So, in the last week, we've announced that we're going to be taking our no-code product and applying it to the problem of algorithmic trading. Because we've got this Turing complete language and there's a parser behind the scene that's actually generating real code, we have the ability to, enable people to do really interesting things. For example, you know, no-code algorithmic trading and define those strategies in plain English, right? Now, exchanges have real utility for their token. What this presents is for Sparkster to have real, meaningful, and substantive utility for its tokens. And so, one of the short-term milestones that we have in the next 6 months is to, in fact, deliver a product for algorithmic trading in plain English. Because I think that we not just have to solve problems for people outside of crypto, but we have a big captive audience here in crypto. I think we can solve problems for them too.
Right, algorithmic trading is obviously a solution that a market for crypto traders, and a lot of people who know your project might be interested in that because they're coming from that community. What else is on the roadmap more technically? I mean, you talked about the fact that you have the language that is basically like English, is Turing complete. What else needs to be done? Because obviously no software project is ever finished. So what kind of visions do you have, and where do you want to be in 1 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, what we are really focused on is how do we combine the efforts of both marketing and sales with the roadmap and the work that the development team are doing, right? So we're going out there, for example, and actively interviewing all sorts of developers, all sorts of software developers to understand what problems do you have? What issues are you experiencing with your current software development tools? How might we be able to build software development tools that solve problems for you, in the real world, if you will, right? And so this is kind of the way in which we're evolving and developing our low-code product. It's in unison and in we're in partnership with actual software developers, so that we know that we're developing a product that at the end of the roadmap, there's actually somebody's problem that's solved, and there's people that want to pay for what we've built, right? And then in the kind of longer term, so short term, what you're going to see from us is the algo trading product. Medium term, we're going to evolve our product into a low-code product. And then longer term, I think what's really interesting is where we're going with our decentralized cloud. So one of the things that really makes our decentralized cloud is that it's quite unique from other decentralized networks, in that the network is a network of networks, meaning we call these cells, right? And these cells are kind of separated from one another, are completely isolated from one another. And one cell is in fact its own network, right? So how we achieve high throughput in Sparkster's decentralized cloud is that we essentially have multiple blockchains that have a completely different DHT, right? Now, that works well for software because I can put one customer in one cell. I can put a different customer in another cell, or one customer can distribute its customers whose first name begins with A in one cell, and customers whose names begin with B in a different cell. And now if each cell is 1,000 TPS, you've got 26,000 TPS across your application. So when we took this kind of idea to market and we started meeting with companies, what we learned was actually how this would be useful is if we take these cells and localize them. And I think that that's a very interesting idea. If we can take these smaller, these smaller networks and localize them, we can solve some very interesting problems, some low latency problems. For example, collaborative VR, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. So we can, communicate collisions. We can calculate diversion routes and take into consideration real-time traffic and load balance, if you will, traffic across multiple diversion routes. And so these are the sorts of ideas that we're exploring with highway commissions and such, to look at, how can we apply our technology in a localized environment? And so, for example, I was meeting with EE last week, a major mobile carrier here in the UK, to talk about this exact thing. And so, I think that to kind of summarize what I'm trying to say, Sparkster really is all about adoption, and every product that we're developing in our roadmap, short term, medium term, long term, it's about how can we solve real problems for real people in the real world.
Right, and as you mentioned, it's important to actually meet corporations that are gonna use it, because you're going after corporate companies. Probably they're not gonna just find you on Google and search for something. You need to be shown there, and you need to be visible to them somehow. So it's good that you're doing that. Also, I know that you have an announcement that is very exciting. So what is that, and what can you tell our viewers in terms of announcements that are coming up very soon?
Yeah, so Sparkster has partnered with a company called Labellium that manufactures IoT hardware kits. So these kits cost about €4,500, and they serve IoT problem cases like smart water, smart agriculture, or connected agriculture, smart cities, and so forth. So what I'm really happy to announce is that Sparkster has sold a kit to the government of Malaysia, and we also did some custom work for them. We really are, by virtue of our partnerships, we really are seeing this sort of real world adoption of our technology, which again, I think is unique, right? We're coming to market not just with working technology where the tokens can be used in our platform on unlock, but also that we actually have customers who are using the products that we've created.
Right. So when you say that you sold the kit, what is that? Is that they have access to the platform and they will be building something on it? Can you be more specific? Because I think even mostly your community cares about that. So what can you give them more of a content and more of a explanation in regards to that announcement?
Yeah, so what they purchased from us, well, not directly from us, but from our partner, is they purchased a hardware kit for smart agriculture. So this includes probes for things like soil moisture soil moisture content and things like that, monitoring temperature and so forth. And some of the custom work we did is that they requested a specific type of dashboard that we built for them to be able to use in concert with the hardware that they purchased. So they purchased a Sparkster smart agriculture kit, and then we did some custom development work for them for the government of Malaysia.
Very cool, guys. So definitely check out that. Is there some kind of blog post or some press release they can take a look at more?
Yeah, absolutely. So by the time this video is released, there'll be a press release about that.
Awesome. So it will be in the description, guys. Sajad, what else do you think is important? What else should our audience know before we wrap this intro up?
I think what's really important is that, what we're focused on. So we're so focused on adoption. Sparkster is partnered with $1 billion company called Arm. They recently were purchased by SoftBank for $30 billion. And they manufacture mobile chips for mobile phones, right? So for example, Apple and Samsung and so forth have ARM designed processors in them. So what we're doing is we're leveraging these relationships and these partnerships, and we're actively going out there to meet companies to talk about how can we apply our products to problems, and evolving our product roadmap to kind of map, to meet those needs and those problems. I think that's kind of the summary of what Sparkster is all about. And we'd love to have you learn more about our project at sparkster.me. And you can check out, our videos on YouTube. We have a lot of AMAs, and we have a lot of tech tutorials, our Tech Tuesdays, and a lot of product demos too. And that's it. I'm really grateful to be here.
Awesome.
And I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sajad. Thank you so much for being here and explaining all the project to us as well. Very interesting and very cool to see the progress. And guys, if you have any questions, leave in the comment. Go check out all the links. Check, smash the bell button. Sajad, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.